The Righteous Mind by Jonathan Haidt. This book brings some really challenging ideas to the table about morality, religion and politics. And it shines a light on the miracle that we humans can cooperate and why we very often fail to do so. In The Righteous Mind, Jonathan Haidt summarizes 25 years of research of moral and social psychology, and just after a few pages I realized that I had a really special book on my hand, a book that the New York Times called, quote, a landmark contribution to humanity's understanding of itself. It talks about why we are divided and why conflict is inevitable in the moral landscape. We have a lot to cover in this review, so it's probably longer than usual. We're going to talk about why we're not as rational as we like to think, why diversity incentives and wokeness often harms the people it tries to help, why research is usually misleading because it's just made on a subset of people who's not representative of the world in general, why groupish righteousness is a feature and not a bug, and why religion makes us better people and why it solves one of the biggest problems that humans are facing. Let's go. Hi again, welcome to the Booklab. I'm Björn, and this is the place where we bring you the best book recommendations when it comes to philosophy, psychology, human nature and human potential. And today we're talking about The Righteous Mind, Why Good People Are Divided by Politics and Religion by Jonathan Haidt. First out is the idea that we're not as rational as we like to think we are. Jonathan Haidt, he subscribes to the notion that our rational reasoning is applied post hoc to our judgment, and our judgment actually starts in the gut and with our intuition. We feel intuitively that a conclusion or judgment is right, and then afterwards we look for reasons that it makes logical sense. The analogy that Jonathan Haidt uses in this book is that of the rider and the elephant. The rider, he looks like he's in charge, but when there is a disagreement, then usually the elephant gets its way. Conscious reasoning is a little bit like a press secretary at the White House. It automatically justifies any position taken by the president. In short, intuition comes first, strategic reasoning second. Quote, moral thinking is more like a politician looking for votes than a scientist searching for truth. End quote. Nearly all research in the world is conducted on a small subset of people who are Western, industrialized, educated, rich and democratic. This forms the acronym WIERD. Quote, they are the least typical and least representative people you can study if you want to make generalizations about human nature, even within the West. Cultures differs between individualist societies and collectivist societies, and the same thing signifies something totally different. Quote, if you grow up in a weird society, you become so well educated in the ethics of autonomy that you can detect oppression and inequality even when the apparent victim sees nothing wrong. End quote. The problem with research that is only conducted on weird people, if I use that expression, is that the weirder you are, the more you see the world as separate objects rather than relationships. The moral domain in weird cultures is also more narrow. We have an emphasis on harm and fairness and also individual autonomy, and we often oversee divinity and community, which are other parts of the moral matrices that are available. Humans are groupish. Collaboration between people of the same moral matrices and people who have been suspicious towards people that are unlike us have had the upper hand, evolutionary speaking. In moral and political matters, we are often more groupish than selfish. We are 90% chimp, 10% bee. Jonathan argues that under the right conditions, we go from being selfish to groupish, often when our in-group is under threat. You might have felt this if your way of life have been threatened at some point. I think many Americans felt that way when the planes crashed into World Trade Center, and even the most unpatriotic among the Americans had a slight urge to put an American flag bumper sticker on their car. Humans are conditional hive creatures, and we have the ability, if the circumstances are right, to temporarily transcend our self-interest and lose ourselves temporarily and aesthetically in something larger than ourselves. Jonathan Haidt, he calls this the hive switch. It was not until I read this book that I could see clearly the evolutionary benefits of religion. There is a correlation between how much sacrifice a commune demands of its members and how long it lasts. But sacrifice is less effective in secular communes. And why is that? Well, in a secular commune, people want a cost-benefit analysis of what they get for their sacrifice, and if it doesn't make sense, if the sacrifice is too much and the payoff is not that big, then off they go, right? Religion fixes that problem. Quote, "The very ritual practices that new atheists dismiss as costly, inefficient and irrational turns out to be a solution to one of the hardest problems humans face: cooperation without kinship." So the hypothesis then becomes, if religion is a group level adaptation, it should produce altruism that makes people exceedingly helpful toward and generous towards other people of the same moral community. And that's exactly what religion does. In the US, the least religious, they give 1.5% of their income to charity, while the religious, lo and behold, give 7% of their income to charity. Religious people also behave better. Religion has survived in evolution because it creates strong communities. And the question is, what will happen now? Now that God is dead and all, will we just have a cold, selfish community of nihilists? Who knows? Time will tell. I worked at a company recently that really embraced the idea of diversity and inclusion and even made it a pillar for the company. It was all well intended, but the outcome seemed to be the opposite of what was envisioned. I felt like the diversity of opinions went down, and people who were from the groups that we were supposed to include expressed that they felt uncomfortable as well. Was I hired because of my skills, my merits and my competency, or was it because of my skin color and gender or whatever? The focus of looking at and thinking about the possible disadvantages different traits could have only highlighted our differences instead of our similarities and our common goals, that we were there because we were great people with great skills that were going to make great fucking games. Yeah, I work in the games industry, and something just felt off. In The Righteous Mind, I find clues to why that is and why I had that hunch that maybe these diversity incentives, sometimes they make more harm than good. Quote, "To make a human hive, you want everyone to feel like a family. So don't call attention to racial and ethnic differences. Make them less relevant by ramping up similarities and celebrating the group's shared values and common identity." End quote. You can make people care less about race by draining race in a sea of similarities and shared goals. There is so much to this book that I can't really boil it down to one single takeaway, but in short, intuition comes first, strategic reasoning second. There is more to morality than harm and fairness, and be aware of anyone who says there is only one true morality for all people, all times and all places. Morality binds and blinds. We are both selfish and groupish. 90% chimp, 10% bee. Our minds are designed for groupish selfishness. It's a feature, not a bug, and this is why it's so hard for us to connect with people of other moral matrices. This book ticks all the boxes for what makes a great book, in my opinion. I have pondered it for months after finishing it. It provided me with a new lens through which I can see the world, and a better understanding of human nature and the challenges that we are facing moving forward. I really think this one should be on the top of your reading list this year. This is a fantastic book, and it made it right up there on my great books list, which you can find in the description. And if you're down there, push the like button. It helps me reach more people with great books. So thanks for that, and subscribe if you haven't. Every Thursday I put out a new video. If you decide to pick up this book and enjoyed it, then maybe you should look into this one as well. Behave by Robert Sapolsky, The Biology of Humans at Our Best and Worst. This is it's a magical book. It's a thick book, but it will help you understand why humans behave as they do, and that's interesting. That's interesting for us because that's why we're here. Human nature is what we're studying, and that's enough for me from this week. See you next Thursday for more book reviews, and until then, Björn out.